What if the most decisive moment in human history was not a war, not a rebellion, and not a betrayal, but a single strategic refusal? In this alternate timeline, the Emperor of Mankind does not launch the Great Crusade, does not scatter humanity across the stars through conquest, and does not attempt to unify the galaxy through force. Instead, he recognizes a deeper pattern forming beneath reality itself, a structure far more dangerous than any alien empire or rival civilization. He sees the warp not as a tool to be exploited later, but as an unstable system that will inevitably shape humanity long before humanity understands it. Rather than racing outward, he chooses containment, consolidation, and preparation. Terra becomes the focal point of an unprecedented experiment, one where expansion is delayed in favor of comprehension, and power is restrained in favor of longevity. This decision does not create immediate glory or visible dominance, but it quietly redirects the future of the galaxy onto a path that no other species anticipates. While the stars remain untouched by human fleets, something far more significant begins to take shape beneath the surface of reality itself, and once this process reaches maturity, every faction in the Milky Way will feel its consequences whether they understand them or not. With the Emperor remaining on Terra, the Imperium never evolves into a sprawling empire defined by endless war. Instead, Terra transforms into a hyper-centralized civilization where every technological, genetic, and strategic resource is refined toward long-term survival rather than rapid dominance. Military forces are redesigned not as instruments of expansion but as containment mechanisms, tasked with eliminating existential threats before they grow rather than enforcing obedience across distant systems. Without the pressure of galactic conquest, industrial output accelerates in precision rather than scale, leading to breakthroughs in automation, cognition mapping, and psychic stability. Terra becomes a closed system of optimization where inefficiency is treated as a threat equal to invasion. Most critically, the Webway project reaches completion without interruption, granting humanity a secure method of interstellar travel that bypasses the dangers of uncontrolled warp exposure entirely. This singular achievement reshapes everything that follows, because humanity no longer depends on unstable psychic navigation to survive among the stars. Expansion becomes optional, calculated, and reversible, and the galaxy no longer hears humanity as a screaming presence tearing through the warp, but as a silent structure growing inward before it ever grows outward. In the absence of the Great Crusade, the Primarchs are never scattered across hostile worlds, never shaped by trauma, isolation, and constant violence. They are developed within controlled environments where their psychological and strategic tendencies are observed, corrected, and refined rather than exploited. Without the need for symbolic war leaders, they are not elevated as distant icons of authority, but trained as specialized coordinators responsible for governance, research, defense, and long-term planning. Their rivalries are managed through structured competition rather than battlefield dominance, and their instability is addressed before it metastasizes into resentment or obsession. There is no emotional vacuum for rebellion to grow within, no fractured loyalty born from abandonment, and no mythologized hierarchy demanding absolute devotion. As a result, the fractures that once tore humanity apart never form, and the internal collapse that defined the original timeline simply has no foundation. The Primarchs do not become legends of destruction, but architects of continuity, and without their fall, the galaxy loses the single most destructive catalyst of human self-destruction. Over centuries, humanity undertakes the most dangerous project ever attempted, not by confronting the warp directly, but by restructuring its interaction with reality itself. Psychic potential is no longer treated as a mystical anomaly or an uncontrolled evolutionary surge, but as a volatile resource governed by strict regulation and mathematical constraint. Training, limitation, and suppression mechanisms are standardized, ensuring that no individual becomes a focal point of instability. Communication, navigation, and cognition systems are redesigned to function within narrow tolerance thresholds, reducing emotional turbulence that would otherwise echo into the warp. As a result, localized regions of the warp begin to stabilize, not because they are conquered, but because they are no longer fed by mass hysteria, unchecked violence, and uncontrolled expansion. Certain warp entities weaken through neglect, others fail to fully coalesce, and the overall structure of the immaterial realm shifts from a rising storm to a contained pressure system. Humanity does not eliminate the warp, but for the first time in galactic history, it prevents the warp from dictating the terms of reality. When the Necrons awaken, they detect something profoundly unsettling, not a conquering empire or a dominant psychic beacon, but a species exerting influence through absence and restraint. Their ancient senses identify patterns in reality that do not align with known cycles of galactic development, suggesting a civilization that has learned to limit itself without collapsing. This alarms the Silent King more than open aggression ever could, because it represents an evolutionary path beyond brute force. The Eldari sense the difference as well, experiencing a slow decline as the galaxy avoids the psychic saturation that once accelerated their downfall. Without endless human warfare feeding emotional excess, the catastrophic tipping point of their civilization is delayed, weakened, or altered entirely. The galaxy enters a state of unnatural balance where no faction dominates and no faction collapses outright, and at the center of this equilibrium stands Terra, silent, contained, and increasingly influential in ways that cannot be easily measured or counted. Beyond the galactic rim, the Tyranid hive mind observes not through sight, but through imbalance, scanning the universe for concentrations of excess energy, uncontrolled growth, and psychic noise. In this timeline, the Milky Way presents an anomaly, a galaxy that does not broadcast the usual signals of prey species spiraling toward collapse. There is resistance without provocation, structure without expansion, and calculation without chaos. The hive fleets advance cautiously, uncertain of a system that refuses to behave according to established patterns. This hesitation is unprecedented, because it is not driven by fear or opposition, but by the absence of exploitable weakness. Humanity has not become louder or stronger in the traditional sense, but quieter and more stable, and for a predator designed to consume excess, this presents a fundamental problem. For the first time, the Great Devourer encounters a galaxy that does not invite consumption. Humanity eventually expands, but not as a crusade and not as a flood. Every new system is integrated through infrastructure, oversight, and redundancy, ensuring stability before population growth is permitted. Governance prioritizes function over ideology, and rebellion becomes statistically rare because systems are designed to prevent collapse rather than react to it. This imperium does not decay through neglect or superstition, but it is not compassionate either. Individual freedom exists only within carefully defined parameters, and emotional excess is treated as a systemic risk. Culture becomes efficient, controlled, and enduring, trading expression for survival. Humanity does not burn brightly across the galaxy, but it does not fade either, persisting as a structured presence that reshapes the long-term trajectory of the Milky Way. As centuries turn into millennia, the question shifts from survival to consequence. A galaxy without endless war is undeniably more stable, yet it is also narrower in possibility. Creativity is regulated, conflict is minimized, and unpredictability is treated as an enemy. Humanity has avoided extinction, avoided collapse, and avoided self-destruction, but it has done so by placing reality itself within a controlled framework. Other species adapt or stagnate under the system, and the universe slowly reshapes itself around humanity's quiet dominance. The nightmare of chaos is replaced not by freedom, but by permanence, and the price of stability becomes increasingly difficult to measure. So, was this the better outcome? A future where humanity prevented its own collapse before it could ever begin? Or was it merely a different form of confinement imposed upon the galaxy as a whole? By staying on Terra and mastering the warp before it mastered humanity, the Emperor changed everything without ever raising a banner or declaring a war. The stars grew quieter, the future grew narrower, and survival became assured at the cost of possibility. The galaxy did not fall into chaos, but it also never escaped control. And in the end, the question remains unresolved. Did this decision save existence from destruction, or did it quietly place the universe inside a cage from which it may never escape?